All right, the last point we want to make for today's episode is about engagement. Um, we can talk about this in terms of like thinking about you giving a lesson to your child or presenting. We often say the word presenting. I try and stay a little bit away from that word because is kind of imbued with a little formality to it, and that trips parents up. So I like to call it like not the presentation of the activity, but about the engagement with it, or the lesson that you are giving with it is more like a demonstration or an example, right? So what does this mean? This part about engagement? I don't have my copy of The Absorbent Mind with me right here, but you can imagine there is this beautiful section we read every single time I teach the primary course live that is about the secrets to teaching. You can look it up yourself. It's towards the back of the Montessori of the Absorbent Mind, that book. A whole chapter just about like the role of the teacher, what you're supposed to be doing as the guide. And Maria Montessori uses that word in education that we really do think of a lot in terms of like the fire, sparking the fire of learning in the child. And that is really what you're doing when you are giving a lesson to your child. If you've observed their skills correctly, being patient, you've watched and waited and waited and waited, and you have you're really applying the rest of the Montessori method to the best of your ability, then when it is time to give the lesson, the way we present something with simplicity, not trying to manipulate our children into liking something, but just really just plainly showing them what one of the materials or one of the concepts does. That is like, and then turning it over to your child once your child seems to get it. Like, I think a lot of people think that they have to memorize a very complicated presentation and then have their child sit there quietly while they give this very elaborate lesson. And then when they're finished with the lesson, if you get your child to sit that long and watch you through it, often children's response is like, I don't want to do this. Or like, okay, that's good for you, mommy. Like, I'm going to go play with my toys now. And then what does the parent feel? Like it's crushing, right?
Yeah, this is supposed to work.
Because you worked
they
so
told me on
hard.
the internet that this would work. Like, of course.
You worked so hard. And so the takeaway I would like you to take away from this little session that we have today is to try not to overthink your presentation of the lesson, but take your ego out of it. You're just showing your child an activity, and if you, like Pia, are patient and consistent and repetitive in your examples or your demonstrations, eventually something is going to spark in your child if you wait long enough. And you don't know when that is going to happen, because it's different for every single child. But you have to trust that that you're enough, just like you doing an activity in front of your child. That's the best presentation that you could give. You don't have to memorize anything. We have lots of resources at Child of the Redwoods. Here, I'll just like show this. There's lots of great lessons, and they are all in step-by-step. And you can like follow along and like do the lesson this way, and you'll get there. But the point is like not to overthink the exactness of that presentation. It's more about your child witnessing this work.
Yeah, it's so hard to keep.
Does that make sense?
The humility is so hard for us, right?
Oh, yeah.
That you just can't really do anything about it. Like, you can force a child to comply through various means of bribery or physical coercion, but that does not mean you're going to get the outcomes you hoped for. That has to come from within. That's why they've done so many studies on extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. You can get people to perform, adults and children, and other animals, through extrinsic motivations: money, candy, corporal punishment, timeout, whatever, right? It never, ever lasts. It always results in diminishing returns, and eventually it stops working completely. What does work is intrinsic motivation, helping the person, whether it's an adult or your child, hone in on the thing that motivates them internally, that makes them feel good about learning, or makes them feel good about doing the right thing, or makes them feel good about working hard. Because we have that inside us. And if you can help them capture that feeling, if you can design your environment so that it's possible for that to rise, you will create successful, lifelong successful human beings. Again, research is very clear on this over and over. Yes, extrinsic motivation will work temporarily. It always fails. Intrinsic motivation, harder to achieve, but lasting. And that's really what the Montessori method is also about. So, you told a story a few weeks ago. You were doing some cleanup in a nursery, and there was a particular toy that somebody had found. It's one of those. I think it was the kind that's like it's hovers over the child. We saw those. I think we even had one at some point.
No.
Like no. Well, somebody gave one to us. Whether we kept it or not, I don't know. But it's the kind where it like beeps and burp, 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 burp. And the person said, you were like, "Well, we have to get rid of this."
Okay, yes. We were given a toy like that, and then it left our house within like a week.
No, of course. Or the batteries would come out
Because
of
I have
the.
really strong feelings about
No, we both did, because what you said. The reason I'm bringing this up is what you said is one person said, "Oh, we should keep that. The kids love that." And you were what you said or thought. I think you probably just thought it because you're too nice. It was, of course, they liked it. It was yelling at them all the time. It's the same with. I was thinking also when we saw the other day that child in Costco who was too little for an eye. The parent was showing them a video on
we saw a
YouTube.
10-month-old with an iPad.
And of course, the 10-month-old was engaged and then very angry when the iPad went away because it's yelling at them and it grabs their attention, right? So we think sometimes that those are successful because they capture the attention. That's an extrinsic motivation, as an example of an extrinsic motivation, right? If I whine, then you'll give me the iPad back and then I can watch the flashing lights or whatever it might be. Those are extrinsic motivations. They're not good because they work in the short term. They don't work in the long term. You're instead, with your presentation or you're giving of the lesson, you're going for subtle, you're going for intentional. And you know what? It's not always going to captivate because it's not filled with big flashing lights or high-pitched voices or things like that. The things that people use in media and in other disciplines, and call it education, to captivate the child, because you haven't really captured their learning. You've just captured their attention because you've yelled at them. Whether it's fun, clown-like yelling or mean yelling, it's still the same kind of thing. So my thought on this is, if you're giving that presentation, you've done your observation, now you follow the child, now you've given them the right presentation or lesson for what they're showing you, and they're like, nah, no thanks. Don't try and amp it up. It's not because of your performance. It's not because of you're doing something wrong. Yes, if you were to give them that same lesson and honk a horn, they're going to look at it. That's not the goal. The goal is you give them the lesson and then you let them absorb it. And when they're ready, they will come back.
That's
Have
right.
faith in the child. Don't try and overwhelm their senses in order to pull them in.
That's right. That's right.